For the next hour, you'll be leaving the Show Me state and entering the Show Me the Money state. So stop what you're doing, grab a pen, and get ready to learn. Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group will be your guides for straight talk and honest answers about living the life you deserve in retirement. So prepare to be empowered. Now, here are your Show Me the Money hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shade.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Welcome to Show Me the Money, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about current events, also some ways to generate income in retirement, how the IRS taxes retirement income, and finally, 9 things you'll spend more on in retirement. My name's Jeff Shade, and as always, I'm just here to ask the questions, but the words of wisdom and solid advice, they come from Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. And I will start with you, birthday boy Randy. It was this past week. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. For as old as I am, I feel like I'm probably about 25 is all.
Yeah, well, they say you're only as old as you feel. And I mean, my gosh, you have done so much in your life, and age is just a number. And in your case, yeah, you're a very young man. But nevertheless, a belated happy birthday to you. Turn to you, Jake. How are you this morning, my friend?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Just happy to be here with the birthday boy, as you put it.
Well, we're going to blow out the candles a little bit later on in the program today. Glad everybody could join us here on Show Me the Money. We're about, 2 days away from Donald Trump being sworn in for his second term in office. So what do you think is in store for us? We've had this bull market here. Do you think the bull market is going to continue into 2025?
Well, I do believe that the bull market is going to continue into 2025 and 26 and 27. Is it going to be straight up? No. Everybody would like to think, hey, it's predictable. We can know for sure what day it's going to hit 6,500. It's going to hit 7,000. It's going to hit 8,000. It's going to hit 10,000 eventually. But we don't know those exact days. But we do know this, that there will always be a need for the capital markets. There's a ton of money out there. There's a ton of optimism. We got a new president coming in that's going to be growth promotive in all of his policies. So I'm really pretty excited about the future.
Do you think that there will be many changes or a lot of changes made in the first week? I know that Donald Trump has said, the day I get into office, I'm going to do this or that. What's your feeling on the first week, the first month?
Jeff, I think on Tuesday, after he's after he's inaugurated, I should say, on Monday, I think we're going to see footage of him with his famous signature on a whole bunch of black portfolios or whatever we want to call those that he has with all his executive orders in there. Let me just say I'm hopeful that we'll see that, and I do believe that we will see that, especially when it comes to the border and some of the more pressing topics. I think we're definitely going to see action. I think if you were going to draw a contrast between the first Trump term and the second Trump term, the most obvious one at this point is he is ready to go this time, where I think it caught him off guard a little bit how many positions he would really need to fill in his first term. He needs 1,500, 2,000 people or so in his total administration. And I think he's pretty well almost done filling those. Obviously people still have to get confirmed and all that, but I think he's ready to go.
Yep. I think he's going to do the same thing as here in Missouri. We have Mike Kehoe, the new governor, and right out of the box, the same day he was inaugurated this past week, he signed 5 executive orders bolstering the police, new funding for the police to put criminals in jail,
right,
and also to help identify the illegal immigrants, which I think is an awesome deal.
Right. Well, I think you could very well see Donald Trump take the oath of office and then say, excuse me, and then go, behind the podium and start signing a few things. I think he's really anxious to get ready. And as you said, I think he's well more prepared now than he was in his first term. So we're really looking forward to that. And that is just 2 days away. Jobs report came out in December. Pretty positive, right, guys?
Yeah. It kind of threw people back on their heels. It was so strong. And, of course, that kind of sent the market into a little bit of a tailspin because, of course, if we have too hot a jobs market, they figured that's going to ultimately fall in the direction of promoting inflation in the economy. So that was what kind of sent it reeling. But we had pretty good news on the PPI.
Okay, and the PPI as opposed to the CPI, can you explain that for folks?
So the PPI basically is the producer price index, which basically goes back to, the people that make things ultimately have to pass on inflationary pressure to consumers, which is the CPI.
Mm-hmm.
And those two things combined, they come up with this thing called the CPE. But anyway, the PPI is the one that really is forward-looking and kind of tells us where we're headed. And the good news is it came in slightly less hot than they even anticipated. So really a good thing. And I think that gives us a little better outlook. And I think that's going to push us forward in the right direction.
So that's the difference between the CPI and the PPI. And again, with the PPI, that is the producer's price index. Some people on Wall Street see the Fed unlikely to cut interest rates at all in 2025. And just a couple of weeks ago, we were expecting, 2 rate cuts. And before the end of the year, we thought that there were going to be several.
Yeah, I think, Jeff, it's important. We talk about these numbers. These numbers are very important. These are things that we watch every day. But I think for the average listener, what you need to know is the market is selling off or has been selling off because things are too good, the jobs market's too good, and the economy's too good, which makes no sense. The reason it's selling off is because the market is concerned that the Fed will not continue to lower interest rates because it simply doesn't need to help the market. It doesn't need to help the jobs market. It doesn't need to help the economy, which means it's healthy enough to stand on its own. So it makes no sense to sell good investments because the economy's too good and the job market's too good, right? This is really, I think, going to just turn into a great buying opportunity, and I think things are likely to go higher. So to your question, about 6 months ago, the market was pricing in 7 rate cuts while the Fed was acknowledging they thought they might cut 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Now the market is pricing in 1 rate cut, and the Fed is down to 2 times that they're thinking they're going to cut. I personally think they may not cut again for the foreseeable future because I think the growth is going to be pretty robust. The only exception to that is if President Trump is able to really turn on the oil drilling in really short order, like the next couple of months, which is possible, but it may take him longer than that. So we may see a little bit of more inflation before that happens. But he knows he has to get rates down. He knows he has to drill for oil to at least keep them from going up. He's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. That's why he said drill, baby, drill every 5 seconds on the campaign trail, because he knows how important that's going to be. I think he's the right guy for the job. I think he's going to get it done. But, it doesn't make sense, I guess, to sell stocks because things are so great,
Right.
in my opinion.
Well, some strategists say that there actually could be a Fed rate hike. Do you think that's possible?
If it takes him longer to get oil drilling online, yes, I do think that's possible. He can incentivize, he can move, he can throw his weight around, but he ultimately cannot make people drill oil wells and make them pump this oil out of the ground. So I think he's going to do everything he can, and ultimately we can trust oil companies to be greedy and self-interested, and there's nothing wrong with that in corporate America. That's how it works. And I think that these oil companies, if he makes it attractive enough for them, they will be drilling tomorrow. And again, I think he knows how to do that. I'm with Randy about his predictions on this year. I think from here, it's definitely up from here.
I think Jake is exactly right. He's got to get oil going. When we think of oil, we sometimes think of, well, that's going to lower gas prices, that'll lower diesel prices, and that's going to help transportation costs. But we have to remember that oil through our economy is completely pervasive. I mean, it is everywhere. Anything with plastic, your cell phone that people are on 17 hours a day now is petroleum.
Soon it'll be 25 hours a day.
I know. It's amazing how many people use it for absolute. I was thinking of that the other day. Not only do we make phone calls on the cell phone, but we check the news. We check the weather on the cell phone. Many people use it as an alarm clock. A lot of people use it to stream television shows or anything like. It's more than just a phone. If you lost your cell phone, there is just this panic that goes through you till you get it back.
Yeah. Here's the one that I always like is you're sitting around, you're having a conversation amongst people, and somebody asks a question, and they go, well, I don't know. Then everybody grabs their phone, and they go to Google.
They start Googling.
And then you have the answer, right?
Right.
But yeah, so I think, if he can get the oil prices to come down, we've been hanging around $70-$75 a barrel. If that comes down to $50 a barrel, I could hope that it would try to get there. If it does, you're talking about, roughly a 30% decrease. That is going to help put a lot of pressure downward on pricing and disinflationary. It'll create disinflationary prices. Maybe not deflationary as much as we would like, but disinflationary. In other words, help us curtail inflation and maybe get the current inflation back to that 2% mandate. And if we get that, then the Fed is going to want to and almost be forced to lower interest rates so that we can refinance some of our debt that we've created over time. So I think Trump has three things he really needs to get done. Drill, baby, drill. Fix the border. Number three, I think the tax code with corporate taxes going down is going to help things a lot. There's just a lot of issues out there that he has to address, but I think he's pretty clear and concise on the three things he needs to get done right out of the box.
So he certainly does have his challenges in front of him, and I do think that he is much better prepared for this term than he was the first term. There were a lot of advances made during the first term. Of course, taxes on everyone's mind here because, of course, tax season is just around the corner. You can file your first taxes, I think, on January 27th. A lot of people will not have the paperwork to do that, but those who do have it can file it as soon as January 27th. So I think we're in agreement, or are we, that this Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that we've enjoyed here for the past few years is going to continue throughout at least his term.
Yeah, I would think so for sure. I don't see how going back to basically you effectively raising tax brackets on people, I don't see how that helps anybody and promotes any kind of growth. We've got to grow our way out of this, but we also have to do it while cutting expenses. I often equate it to, it is like a home budget. If you're at home and you're in debt and you're trying to figure out how to make more money to get yourself out of debt, you can't just go out and incur more debt and grow it at the same pace that you grow your income. You've got to get to a point to where you can stabilize at least your budget and grow your income, and then you can work your way out of it.
Yeah, I would agree with you completely. And even on my home budget, what I do and what I've done here recently is I've gone down my budget every time I pay a credit card bill, and it's like $8 or $15 or something like that. I look and see what that 8 or 15 was too, and it's usually to some sort of streaming service, and I've made a record of those and decided which ones that I could cut out. And it's the same sort of thing with the United States government. I understand that's what Elon Musk is doing.
Right, exactly. We've got to cut out all the Starbucks visits on the budget.
Yeah.
It's the upgrades to first class that kills me on the government.
Yeah, well, I think literally, I think you're right, Jake. It's the upgrades to first class.
Well, I was in D.C. After Christmas, and on the plane, I saw DoD members with their badges on in first class.
Interesting.
And you hear about this stuff, but when you see it, it really gives you some heartburn. Need a Tums or something because you just want to smack somebody. But it's interesting because I know a lot of people listening to this show have never flown first class and probably never would fly first class because of how much it costs. Yet the government is flying first class on your money. If that doesn't make your blood boil, I don't know what will.
Well, as they say, there's a new sheriff in town here, and he's going to be accountable. We're looking forward to that here in 2025. I am optimistic. I know here for the month of January, things have not been exactly great for folks all around the country. We certainly have had our challenges, but still there is a very big light at the end of this tunnel, so I'm going to be optimistic about things. You're listening to the program today. You are optimistic as well, too, about 2025, but you still do have some questions. You're not sure that you're properly prepared for a confident retirement. We may have the answer for you. It's called the Floyd Financial Group Retirement Review. Call this number right now. It is 417-889-7233 and request your complimentary review. There's no cost, no obligation. Certainly there is no judgment. We'll meet you where you are. It's a casual conversation, a chance for you to sit down with Randy and Jake at Floyd Financial Group. Ask the questions that you need the answers to put you on a path towards a confident retirement. There is no question off limits. You can talk about, when do I take Social Security? How do I create an income plan? What about insurance? What about health care, long-term care, estate planning? We can answer it all for you. Again, no cost, no obligation for this whatsoever. 417-889-7233. You can also find out more about us online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Time for a break. Randy and Jake, when we come back here on Show Me the Money, we are going to be talking about some ways to generate income in retirement, all that and more when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready for another helping of some more real money talk? Thought so. Now, here's another serving of Show Me the Money with your hosts, Randy and Jake Floyd, with Jeff Shade.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about 10 ways to generate income in retirement.
And Randy, when it comes to retirement planning, income planning is typically the first point of discussion. So let's go down the list here for those folks who are wondering, well, in addition to my Social Security, how am I going to create some income in retirement? And more people are doing this one, Randy. It's called the Encore career. They're going back to work, or they're not stopping working, not only because they need the money, but because they just want to work. That can pose a problem for those workers coming in after us because we're not giving up those jobs.
Yeah, that's for sure. One of the things I would say about that is we have seen that more and more over the years where people will actually retire, go home, and during the last few years here, they've been called back to work part-time, making almost as much money as they made when they were working full-time because of the tight job market. Now, that may not always be, but looking back over our shoulder and looking historically, there's been something like 30 to 35% of the people that still want to work part-time, and many want to get paid. There are some that are just strictly into volunteer work and things like that. But it's important, for people to stay active and keep going in retirement. One of the worst things we can do is go home and just sit down, because those people typically, because of the inactivity, develop health conditions that ultimately can be their demise. So the Encore career is something that's alive and well, and I think it helps people to maintain a good social life, as well as getting out and about and moving around, and also enjoying the extra income they need to round out their retirement in the early years, maybe when they want to travel a little bit more and spend a few more dollars.
Yeah, and I have run into people who have retired, and in the first month or so, they've gotten everything done. They've cleaned out the garage. They have done all the things they wanted to do, and then they look around and go, well, now what? And before you know it, in another week or two, they've got a part-time job, and they're as happy as they can be. So that is a good way to generate some income in retirement, is the Encore career. I mentioned Social Security benefits. How can we affect the amount of money we're going to get out of Social Security? It isn't just really a static amount. You only get this much, right?
Right. So Jeff, most people know that at age 62 is the earliest that you can withdraw Social Security unless you are disabled, or if you happen to be a widow or widower, and it makes sense, there may be some benefits for you there at age 60. But for most people, 62 is the youngest age we can take it, and then we can actually leave it all the way through full retirement, which is generally, for most people that's listening to this today, 67. But you can also extend that out to age 70, where you can delay taking it until then, which is where you get your maximum benefit. There's probably somewhere around a 25 or 30% variance between those two numbers, being 62 going to age 70. However, we always have to think about, what's my health like? What am I trying to accomplish? What have I saved? Do I need to wait to age 70 to make ends meet while I maybe do my Encore career while I wait for age 70 if I've got a 401k that I can, or an IRA where I can turn on some income, or maybe I have some other things we're going to talk about, some rental income or whatever. But Social Security is one of those things we need to talk about, we need to discuss, and we need to understand how it's going to affect you, how it might affect your spouse, if one of you should predecease the other and die early. So there's just a lot of things to consider when you look at when do we take Social Security.
And I know that we have a Social Security optimization program that we can run here at Floyd Financial Group, but many times it does just as well to sit down and figure it out as we do here every day. Next one is going to be a pension. Now, with a pension, you generally have about 3 or 4 choices as to how to take that, right?
Right, you do. And I have to tell you, this is a crucial point. A couple things I would say about the pension. Many times we have a lump sum option, or we have an option to take it where we get the maximum amount of money per month based on excluding our spouse getting anything when we pass away. Now, sometimes those numbers can vary greatly, and sometimes it's not that much. We also have a situation where we can get maybe 75% of our pension to our spouse, 50%, and some will even give you different options than that. There can be many of those. The thing that's important to know about a pension is whether you take the monthly payment or annual payment, if that's the case, or do I take the lump sum and invest it somewhere else? And so when we sit down and we look at this, we have to look at what is the percentage of your lump sum that your pension is willing to pay you in each of those different scenarios I just described, versus what we might do really investing that money conservatively. Because remember, your pension is going to be very conservatively invested, but they get the option, or the added advantage, I would say, of using the law of large numbers to mitigate risk that we don't get when we take the lump sum. However, I will tell you, the age-old question is this, Jeff: do I take my $1 million in my pension fund, or do I let them pay me $50,000 a year?
Right.
And so when you look at that number, and there's no right or wrong answer there. Some people say, I want the security of knowing I got the $50,000. But if you think about it, on $1 million, all I need is a 5% return to have my $50,000 and still have my cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Right? The other $1 million is still there. So when we're considering all this, we have to look at what does that thing actually pay out. The other thing is, if you have a pension from a state, which is where a lot of these are now, state and government work, many times the states allow you to escape state income tax up to maybe $100,000. And of course, if you live in the state of Delaware or something like that, that could be a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
Around here in Missouri, it might be 4 or 5% of it. But there's just a lot of things to consider when you look at taking a pension and how you take it.
So if our listeners have questions about taking a pension, whether they should take it as a lump sum or any variation, again, come and talk to us about that. We'd love to help you out with that. 417-889-7233 is our telephone number. Talking about ways to generate income in retirement. Next one's going to be annuities. Is that a popular way to do it, Randy and Jake?
Yeah, there's a lot of annuities used out there today. You know, sometimes, and I've heard this phrase was coined a long time ago, the annuities can almost be like a personal pension plan, meaning that the insurance company in an annuity contract will give you certain guarantees if you want those guarantees. Now, you can build these things where they are fixed, kind of like a CD, where they pay a certain amount of interest for a certain amount of time. You can fix them where they are variable, where they're tied to the stock market, where they go up and down with the stock market. You can also put riders on those things that say, hey, we're going to guarantee you a minimum income for life, regardless of what happens to the performance of your contract underneath if it's invested in the market. And then we have fixed indexed annuities, which give you a guarantee of principal and an option for an income rider and mitigation against loss if markets go down. So lots of options on that. So what are the negatives to the annuities?
Right.
You have to commit your assets for a period of time in most cases. You're limited on how much money you can withdraw, but generally speaking, most people are going to draw somewhere between 5 and probably 6% or maybe even less out of their retirement account each year. And most of the annuity contracts have at least a 10% per year free withdrawal where it doesn't cost any penalties or anything. And you know, if you look out historically at what brokers and people in the financial business will tell you, you shouldn't withdraw more than 4% of your balance each year anyway, and then adjust it for inflation looking forward. So, you know, the annuities can be somewhat restrictive. I think the biggest thing is when you're sitting down and people are going over this, do annuities have a place in your portfolio? Mm-hmm. Yes, probably so. Maybe. It depends on your risk tolerance, what you're trying to accomplish, your experience in the market, you know, and just how comfortable you are with fluctuation and what I call volatility in the market as to what a good mix between different asset classes might be, not just annuities, but stocks, bonds, you know, all the different things that are out there.
Ways to generate income in retirement. That's what we're talking about with Randy and Jacob Floyd Financial Group. We've talked about an Encore career, Social Security, pensions, annuities. Next one on the list is going to be real estate income. But Randy, I think in retirement, most people are not going to want to buy, a rental house or some property like that and actively manage it. But there are other ways that you can invest in real estate.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's these things called real estate investment trust, or REITs for short, as people have called them. There's Delaware statutory trusts where people, maybe they've got a portfolio of rental property that they want to sell and they want to invest that someplace else and passively take income off of it and kick the capital gains down the road where they don't have to realize maybe all that depreciation they've taken against their rental properties over time. Most of the real estate investment trusts are privately traded. There are some that are publicly traded. The thing that you have to be careful on with DSTs, with REITs in general, especially if they're private, is if you want to get out of those things, there's generally a time frame of maybe up to 10 years. And if you want to get out early, you got to find the next buyer.
They're not as liquid as we would like them to be, but still, real estate can be a good thing for people in retirement. But again, I do not recommend people buy a rental house, because that is pretty much a full-time job. Let's talk about the 4% rule. If you only took 4% of your retirement income, I mean, that's one thing, but I don't think that the 4% rule really applies much anymore, does it, or does it not?
The idea behind the rule definitely applies. Whether it's 4% or 3% or 5% is open for interpretation. I will tell you that if we have the right protections in place and we're not over risked, you can usually get closer to 5% of the balance. And what that rule refers to is if we take a withdrawal of 4% or 5% of the total balance of your retirement assets each year, as long as we're earning, a decent return, it should replace the money that you're taking out each year. So if you want to make sure that you're not spending your money down, the 4% rule, or in this case, the 5% rule, will, that doesn't mean the money will never go down at all, but it means that we will likely see it trending sideways to slightly up over time.
All right, so the 4% rule, as you said, it's a general rule. It isn't one that we use all the time. The 4% sometimes can be a 2.5% rule, or it can be more than that. It just depends upon your individual situation. The next one I want to talk about here is dividend income or dividend stocks. What do you think about those?
Yeah, so Jeff, there's a lot of things to talk about here. We'll kind of unpack this really quickly. So dividends are one of those things that some people come in and say, all I want are stocks that pay dividends straight up. That way I can know what my income is going to be, month to month. And do dividends change? Yes, they do, but they tend to change slowly. The challenge with focusing strictly on dividends is sometimes we get into situations where companies are not actually able to support the dividends that they are paying, which means that they're paying you back with some of your own money. So that's kind of problematic. And so we always do a little look-see as to how those stocks are doing, price-wise, income-wise, what their balance sheet is looking like. Are they growing? Are they dying? Are they a good, stable company? There's a lot of things to think about when it comes to dividends. They are not the be-all, end-all, I guess is what I'm saying. Can they be an important part of your income setup? They absolutely can. The one thing that's nice about dividends, if you are going to own a dividend-paying stock or a portfolio of dividend-paying stocks inside a brokerage account, not a retirement account, a brokerage account, you get a step up in basis every time the dividend comes in. And if you dividend reinvest, that raises your cost basis, which means that you ultimately get taxed less at the end when you start to draw out. And you still get the price appreciation if the stock goes up along with the dividend. And that's what's really attractive to a lot of folks. Is it a good proposition for your retirement income? Yes, it can be. But again, all these things have to be measured and weighed against the person's ability to take risk, their want to take risk, and managing volatility as well as the income stream they desire. Number 8 would be options contracts. Number 9 would be limited partnerships. And then number 10, the reservoir, which is basically where we set some money aside that we don't plan on using, that we can set aside and let it grow. And maybe one day if we need it for an emergency, healthcare costs or whatever, we have some money to tap there. But I want to go back, number 1, to options contracts. This is something that is, sometimes people say, well, I'd like to get into that, but there's a lot to learn there. And I agree, there's a lot to learn there. There are certain things like selling call options. Covered calls means I own the stock and I can get an income on that stock while I own it. And I may have to sell it at a certain point, but I'm protected because if I do have to sell it, I don't lose any money. And I get to keep what they paid me for the call option. So that's a way to generate income. The other thing is the limited partnerships can be great, and they generally they could even get into private equity setups and things of that nature. The problem is when you have a limited partnership, if you ever want to get out of that sucker, you're going to find the next buyer, right. And that's kind of problematic for a lot of people. So that's the last 3. In conclusion, I guess what I would say is there's lots of ways to generate income and develop a plan for retirement. That's what we do here at Floyd Financial Group. And making all this make sense and bringing it into focus is what we do.
And I'm sure that based on our conversation today, Randy and Jake, that our listeners may have some questions that they'd like to ask of you about generating income in retirement. If that is you, once again, we want you to give us a call here at Floyd Financial Group so you can sit down with us on a one-on-one basis and ask your questions. 417-889-7233 is our telephone number. I'll repeat it again, 417-889-7233. 7233. Use that number right now. Make that call. All you got to do is leave your name and telephone number. Ashley will call you back during the week and set up a time that's convenient for you to come in and sit down and have a casual conversation with Randy and Jake. We're not going to sell you anything. It's no tie zone. It's just a casual conversation. Imagine that you have a relative in the financial services business that you could call upon to ask your questions. Well, you do with Floyd Financial Group. Once again, 417-889-7233. You can also find out more about us online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Time for a break, guys. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking about how the IRS taxes retirement income and more when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
We're back with your financial catch of the day. And it's a big one. Here's more Show Me the Money Radio with your hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shane.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about how income is taxed in retirement in the many different ways.
Yeah, and tax season is almost upon us here. As I said, the first day you can file your taxes, January 27th. I know a lot of people looking forward to doing that. I say facetiously, most people do wait until probably around April in order to do that. But we're going to talk about different sources of income and how they are taxed. First one's going to be Social Security. This is one that has been misunderstood a little bit, Randy, when we say that Social Security can be taxed up to 85% of your income. And some people confuse that a little bit.
Yeah, basically what it amounts to is it's going to be taxed 85%. It's saying that up to 85% of what you receive in your Social Security check can be subject to tax. So the way it breaks out, basically, if you're a married couple and you keep your income below $32,000, you're going to probably pay no taxes on Social Security, and you're going to fall in that 10 to 12% tax bracket for the Fed. If you are a single, I think the number is 24,000. I never have these committed to memory, but you can keep that where you don't pay taxes on Social Security. Once you breach 32,000, you get to 44,000 as a married couple, you're going to go to where 85% of it is taxable. Between that 32,000 and the 44, half your Social Security is taxable. And I think for the single, it's 24 to 32. Half of it's taxable, and anything over that 32 is where it goes to 85%. So when we look at how we take income and where we take income from and when we take income determines a lot of the taxability of things. And so that's why as we look at how Social Security is going to be taxed and our other income plays into that, it's really important that we, have kind of thought through each of these different segments and how they affect us.
And Social Security is taxed at the ordinary income tax rate. It's not discounted at all. Randy, do you recommend for those people who are taking Social Security that they have taxes withheld? And if so, how do we have taxes withheld from our Social Security check and how much?
Right. So generally you can go out online if you're coming into retirement, you can go out online. We set up a login and we can actually file for Social Security there. We can set up our direct deposit. We know how much it's going to be. We know approximately when it's going to hit, and we can also have taxes withheld right there on that site. Now, it's important though that you don't just go out there and think, okay, well, here's my Social Security. How much do I withhold? So we need to have a conversation about, do we have pension income? Do we have income from brokerage accounts? Do we have income from CDs, savings accounts? Do we have rental income? All these other sources of income, we must consider those things before we just sit down and figure out what we're going to do with Social Security. Now, you could just say, hey, I figure I'll be in the 12% tax bracket. I'm going to withhold 12% from Social Security. For the Fed, I'm going to withhold 4% for the state of Missouri or 5%. And then know that's out there, and then we play that, we can, feather that into all the other income sources that you have coming in. Or we can come up with a gross number of what you need based on what Social Security may be and what you're going to take from all your other types of investments, and then we can sit down and calculate it. It's something that we do for people every day, but it can get a little bit convoluted as you start to go down that road.
Right, and a lot of people like to do that. They do like to get a refund, so you can withhold your taxes from Social Security. What about pensions? Are they taxed at ordinary income rates too?
Generally they are, and unless, again, if you have some type of a municipal or a state income tax, or a state pension, I should say, many times those are exempted up to a level. In the state of Missouri, that's up to the first 100,000 now.
Okay, what about interest-bearing accounts? Let's say that I've got a CD or I've got a savings account, something like that. At what tax rate are those taxed at?
Yeah, so the CD interest as well as any normal interest payment you're going to get, whether that be interest off of a CD, fixed annuity, an indexed annuity, as long as it's not a retirement account, those are all going to be taxed at what we call ordinary income tax. They just add up in your total income, and they're at the regular tax rate that you fall into.
Okay, and there's also municipal bond interest. Is that exempt from any sort of tax?
Yeah, so municipal bonds can be exempt from federal income tax and may actually be exempt from state income tax. So the one thing about municipal bonds, people go, well, that's a no-brainer. That's where I should go and place all my money, right? Well, They can be very solid investments and very safe investments. They typically are lower yielding investments. And depending on what your tax bracket is will determine whether or not they can really be a good deal for you or not.
So far, it's pretty straight and simple here. Most of these are taxed at ordinary income tax rates. But let's get into, let's say that I sell some stocks or bonds or mutual funds. How are those going to be taxed?
Sure. So if you have stocks, bonds, and mutual funds inside an IRA or a retirement plan like a 457, a 450, or a 403B, I should say, or a 401k, not Roth, but just typical, you're going to find out that those things are not subject to tax until you spend that money. However, if you have a brokerage account that holds stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, if you hold those for more than 12 months, they fall under long-term capital gains treatment. If you hold them less than 12 months, they fall under ordinary income tax treatments. So basically, if you are selling stock and mutual funds that are full of stock, okay, you are going to have 0, 15, or 20% tax brackets. Now, the 20% tax bracket on stock in a brokerage account, you got to get up to $500 and some $1,000 a year in gain before you ever hit that. Generally, people are going to be in 0 or 15%. And if you stay in the 12% tax bracket, which is where a lot of people in this country live, you may pay 0 on long-term cap gains.
We're talking about how some income is taxed in retirement with Randy Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. Again, our telephone number, if you'd like to come in and talk to Randy or Jake, 417-889-7233 for your no-cost, no-obligation Floyd Financial Group review. Make that call right now, 417-889-7233. Let's talk about dividends. How are they taxed, Randy?
Sure. So we have qualified dividends, which are basically companies that are domestically based companies. And we have non-qualified, which are, outside the country many times. Sometimes you can pay 0 taxes on dividends, especially if you stay in the 12% tax bracket. You can pay 0 tax on dividends, and that can be a really, really big savings for people. We just have to be sure that we are understanding exactly how they work inside your portfolio. Again, most people today have a lot of money inside IRAs, 401ks, that sort of thing. You don't get capital gains tax treatment on those, or you don't get the qualified dividends treatment on those if they're inside retirement accounts. They have to be in a brokerage account, something outside of your 401k or IRA.
Let's talk about IRAs, 401ks, contributions to traditional IRAs and 401ks. They reduce your taxable income, but what about withdrawals? How are they taxed?
Sure. If you have a traditional IRA or 401k, not a Roth, you're going to get a tax deduction for what you put into those each year. However, when you take that money out, it's going to be taxed at whatever the current tax rate is based on the income that you have. Also, when you think about traditional IRAs and 401ks, at some point you will have to start taking money out of those. Generally, right now that's age 73, but under the Secure Act 2.0, I think it does actually expand probably to age 75. So for some of those that are listening today that are in their 60s, it may be 75 before you'd ever have to take any money out of those accounts.
Let's talk about life insurance proceeds. I think by and large, life insurance proceeds are not taxable.
That is true. As a general rule, they are. If, however, you have a company that buys a life policy for you, there are some of those that can be subject to taxation. But most people that own life insurance, they know that their beneficiaries are going to get that money tax-free.
All right. And for those people who are listening who have won the lottery, or maybe they're subject to a GoFundMe account, something like that, I've always wondered, lottery winnings, are they taxable?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so that's the first
and
person.
Generally because,
yeah.
And generally because those are big numbers, they're taxed very heavily.
Yeah, not only are they taxable, Jeff, but if you decide to take the money up front, you get it cut in half first and then cut in half again after you tax it. Okay. So if you win $1 billion, let's say on the Powerball, right? I think the take-home amount post-tax, if you take it up front, is like $270, $280, something like that. Yeah, the tax man cometh. That we can be sure of.
Yeah, I've always wondered about those game shows, too, where I've won a new car. I've won all this stuff, too. I would imagine that as soon as you go backstage, there's a tax person there waiting for you to fill out some forms as well, too. So anyway, we're talking about how different income sources are taxed with Randy and Jake at Floyd Financial Group. Next one's going to be savings bond interest. How are those generally taxed?
Yeah, generally tax deferred until you cash them in. Most of those have a 30-year time frame on them. Most times you're not going to get taxed until you cash them in. However, they do have the right to cash those in at the end, at maturity. The state, or the Fed, I should say, does have the ability to tax you there, but they generally do not until you actually cash them in and receive the money.
All right, we talked about annuities before. This is an interesting one. How are annuities taxed? And I'm talking about the principal versus, the interest that you're making on these things.
Right. So again, annuities are tax deferred. Generally, if you have an IRA, sometimes we have IRA annuities. The tax status doesn't change at all there. But if you have a traditional annuity where you've deposited, maybe $50,000 into that thing and it's grown now to where it's $150,000, that $100,000 in interest that's been added to that principal is 100% taxable as ordinary income. So that's always something to think about. There are ways to mitigate taxes when you take income from annuities. One of those is what's called the exclusion ratio. I won't get into that today because it gets a little weedy for what we're doing here right now. There's also these things, if you want to pass on annuity contracts to your beneficiaries without them having to feel the full tax brunt, we can do what's called a post-death 1035 exchange, which basically allows us to kick the can on taxes for a very long time. So the great advantage of annuities outside of retirement accounts is we get to grow our money tax deferred, and we get to stack money on top of money that we would have paid in taxes otherwise versus a CD. And then, of course, we have some additional, like I just described, additional options for the exclusion ratio as well as the post-death 1035 exchange.
Randy, how are gains on the sale of a home taxed generally?
Yeah, this is a question that comes up all the time. In fact, my daughter is selling a home, and she said, well, I have to pay taxes on the gain because her house is worth probably $100,000 more than she paid for it.
Right.
Well, the good news is for married couples, every couple of years you get a $500,000 exclusion. For a single, it's $250,000. So not much to worry about there for most people, unless they're just in a really unusual area or it's a Century Farm or something that somebody's selling.
Right. Those people who paid $40,000 for something, now it's worth $4 million. They're not right here in Springfield, Missouri, generally. So I think generally, if you do go ahead and sell a home here in our part of the country, unless the gain is over $500,000 for a married couple, you're not going to have to pay tax on that. Talking with how different sources of income are taxed with Randy and Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. Again, if our conversation piques your interest, you want to talk about taxes with us, we can do that. Of course, we have Rod Link here assisting us all the time here at Floyd Financial Group. And if you'd like to come in and sit down, talk with Randy and Jake, maybe have a consultation with Rod, all you got to do is call 417-889-7233 to request your no-cost, no obligation, no judgment Floyd Financial Group review. That's right. We'll meet you where you are. 417-889-7233. Make that call this weekend. Leave your name, telephone number. Lovely Ashley will call you back during the week and set up a time for you to sit down and talk with Randy and Jake and possibly Rod there at Floyd Financial Group. Not going to cost you a dime. No obligation whatsoever. So make that call. 417-889-7233. This one call, really could make all the difference. We're going to take a break, Randy and Jake. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking about things that you'll spend more on in retirement when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready to climb a mountain of financial know-how? Good, because it's time for more Show Me the Money with your financial Sherpas, Randy and Jake Floyd.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about the top 9 or 10 things that you will spend more on at retirement than you think.
That's right. And in retirement, I think generally, Randy, people think that they're going to spend less money than they did when they were working. Well, the truth couldn't be further from us because, we've really looked at this stuff and there's some things that you are going to spend more on. I'm going to start with this one. For some people, it's going to be travel.
Yeah, so a couple things I would say about this. Number one, unless you just timed it perfectly and you paid off your house just as you retired, then you might have less expense than when you were working. But for most of us, I think that happens a little bit before retirement if we're going to get that done before it's not going to be timed right to the last day. However, I would say that that's not a bad plan if you want to work to that end. But here's what I would say about that. Yes, travel is one of those things that you can easily spend a lot more money on than you would think. Especially as you get out and about, going across the countryside, and you look at the hotel over there, you stay at the Verbo over there, and then you think, well, that Verbo there looks really good. That, by the way, that's like Airbnb for those that don't know what VRBO is. Mm-hmm. There are those people that say, hey, I want to get an RV. Let me tell you, it's not cheap to operate an RV either. And here's the other thing: it's $75 to $100 normally for how would I call those? Run-of-the-mill places to park your RV overnight. And if you want something really good, it's upwards, I've been told, I haven't experienced this, upwards of $250 a night to park your RV.
Oh, my gosh.
Not to mention the fact that you're going to spend $250,000 minimum on an RV if you're going to drive it up and down the road very much. Now, I'm not against anything by doing that. Don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is it can be quite expensive. And then also, if you happen to have a breakdown, that gets quite expensive as well. So overall, the travel costs and things, I always sit down with people, and Jake makes fun of me on this. So we sit down and we're doing budgets for people. And I put in plus an extra $1,500 for miscellaneous. And they go, what's that? That's the things we didn't think of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as far as the RV is concerned, I think if I'm going to pay $250 a night, I want the room service and the running water, and I don't have to hook it up.
Exactly.
I'll do the Verbo, as you called it, or the or the hotel personally. Now, there's nothing wrong with RVing.
No.
We have people that love it.
Yeah.
I will tell you though that I probably have more people that think they're going to love it, buy an RV, and they do a month or so, and they're like, "This is not for me," and then I'm done. So, if you're thinking you might do the RV thing and you haven't done it previously, you may want to consider renting one and giving it a try before you shell out a whole bunch of money to buy one.
Doesn't make any difference what time of the year it is, Randy and Jake. Every time I hear the word RV, my mind goes back to Christmas Vacation. Chevy Chase said, "Hey, Eddie, where'd you get the tenement on wheels?" Oh, that's what they call an RV, Clark, but don't go falling in love with it because we're taking it with us when we go home next month. That's what they call an RV, Clark. Okay, so travel is one that you'll spend more money in retirement. Probably, this is a no-brainer. You're going to spend more on health care in retirement.
Well, it's been said that from, age 65 and up is when we will spend 80% of what we will spend on health care. So most of us, get to the point to where, we get there and we get to retirement, and that's when our body starts to, kind of come apart a little bit, and nobody likes to think about that. But there's studies that say that nearly 95% of adults 60 and older have at least one chronic condition, and 80% have two or more of those conditions that just end up costing money. And there's some numbers out there. Adults over age 65 spend $7,540 annually on health care. Knock on wood, so far, I'm going to knock on my wooden head here, Jeff. I'm not there yet, but it's a consideration for sure. And, as we age and get into our 70s and 80s, that's only going to be more.
Right. And, these are things I think that are so important for people to remember because, again, you get into retirement, they think their expenses are going to be cut in half, but that's just not true. If you got a mortgage payment, it's going to be the same. If you're paying taxes, those are going to be the same. They're probably going to go up. So, many times it can cost you more in retirement. This is based off of a conversation that I saw online with some people who were talking about this. The next one has to do with moving and relocating in retirement. That's going to cost you a couple of bucks to do that. Also, you'll spend more on fitness in retirement because when you were working, you probably maybe were not going to a gym, but now you might be going to a gym. And Randy, you just recently, you don't go to the gym comes to you, right?
I was going to say, especially if your name is Randy Floyd, this one really applies to you.
I mean, you've got a gym, and you brought the gym to your house. So tell me more about that.
That's true. Yeah. This week I have a weight machine coming to my house to go in there beside my treadmill and my bike. And so anyway, yes, it's true. You will spend more on fitness equipment. And then, of course, everybody that's listening
I believe the right term, Randy, is bikes.
Yeah,
bikes, not bike.
The correct number of bikes is the number that you currently have plus one. So
people may be listening to this going, well, he's got 2 or 3 bikes. Randy, come clean. How many bicycles do you have? We're going to put you on the spot here.
Right now, I think I have 9.
9 bicycles. Okay. What are those?
I actually have, to extended family or people that I would claim as family, I have another 4 or 5.
What are these
that are technically his, and they're being borrowed with the air quotes around that.
What do these different bikes do? Are they, 9 different types of bikes? What are they?
So you have road bikes, these are the categories of bikes. You have road bikes, you have gravel bikes, you have mountain bikes, you have e-mountain bikes, you have commuter bikes, you have e-commuter bikes. So, you've got a little bit of everything. Hey, but the idea is no matter who comes to my house,
that's right.
If you come to my house and you haven't ridden a bike, I have one that you can ride because it'll help you pedal.
Yeah. And he has the perfect quiver of bikes. You just whip out the one you need for the occasion.
Well, people spend money on different things in retirement. Yours happen to be bicycles. That's a very good thing. If you're going to spend money in retirement, why not spend it on exercise gear or something like that? You'll spend more on day-to-day expenses in retirement, according to the source that we're looking at. Grabbing coffee from around the corner. Maybe you're going to go out to eat a little bit more. You'll spend more on debt in retirement. I don't know about that. I think that probably pre-retirement or early in retirement, you're going to try to pay off some debt. So I don't know if that's an accurate conclusion.
Yeah, I'm not so
not.
sure about that one either. The thing I will say this, while we go down this list, it sounds like, man, you guys are beating me to death here. I don't know if I could ever retire. Here's what I have learned. I want to give everybody a little hope here.
Yeah.
Most people that come to us and are thinking about retirement have a lot of common sense. And so they are closer, and sometimes much closer, and even over and above what they actually need to retire. What our goal here is to help them know and understand and give them peace of mind that they can go live their life and live their retirement, the way that they want to. Now, do I have situations where that's not true and we have to have people work a little bit longer? We have to maybe figure out some other ways to accommodate their budgetary needs? Yes. But here's what I would say. If you're listening to this program, now is the time to address these things.
Mm-hmm.
Don't keep waiting until you get to the day. It's kind of human nature, right, to procrastinate, right? That's just kind of how we are. Right. But I would encourage anybody listening, come sit down. Let's talk. Let's figure out where you are, because the worst thing in the world would be to think you're somewhere that maybe you're not, or not to realize. In fact, I had a lady, I'll never forget this. I told her after we were done talking, she said, I'm thinking about retiring, but I don't know when I can. I said, you can't afford to keep working. You need to quit, like right now.
You'll actually save money by not going to work anymore.
And go live your life.
Right.
So there's all different kinds of scenarios out there, but most people aren't so far under the bus they can't get out from under it.
Do you think that most people spend less money in retirement, about the same, or more money? If I'm thinking of a budget in retirement, how would I go about determining how much I'm going to spend?
I think if you're I'm not sure there is such thing as a normal retiree. We're all different, right?
Right.
But if you're the average retiree or the median retiree, I think you're probably going to spend just about as much money in retirement as you did when you were working. The idea that you're going to spend less, I don't know that is accurate. Could you? Yeah, if you bite the bullet and start to cut back on things. But most people don't want to decrease in income when they retire. They want to remain about the same, and they want to see how they can sustainably maintain. And again, the hours that you were working, you now must fill some way, and that generally includes money.
I think that spending remains the same, but it's possible you may not need to make as much money to net the same amount.
Absolutely.
And so if we're talking about salary or income, a lot of times that number is maybe 75% of what you needed, because you're no longer funding retirement accounts. You're not funding Social Security tax. You're not funding FICA and all this kind of stuff.
Good call, Jake.
So the income part is maybe 75%, but the spending, I would agree, is the same to maybe a few percent higher even. But that doesn't necessarily mean you need more income in retirement. That's really very relevant to, and it's going to have respects to how much you made previously, how much you were funding, because we have people that are funding 25-30% to their retirement accounts in the last few years before they retire. So obviously, not only are you not funding that, but you're going to start taking money out. So tax brackets in a lot of cases come down when you're no longer working. So yeah, spending the same, income maybe slightly less than you've been used to make it feel the same way it does now.
Yeah, so retirement, this journey is an interesting one because, as you said, you really can't make a budget that's going to apply in retirement as well as you could when you were working. And I don't like to call them budgets. I like to call them bumpers a little bit. You see the kids go to the bowling alley. They put the bumpers up so the ball doesn't go in the gutter. If you sort of do it that way, you have a range that you're going to spend in. I think that's a little bit better than putting together a hard and fast budget. But, enjoy your retirement. When you were working, there were a lot of things you couldn't do, and now that you're retired, you've got the time to do them, and they're going to cost money. But if you are listening to the program today and you're interested in how much you may spend in retirement, come talk to us. We would love to talk to you about what it costs to be you in retirement. Again, that telephone number, 417-889-7233, to get your no-cost, no-obligation Floyd Financial Group Retirement Review. Not going to cost you a dime whatsoever. It is a casual conversation. We're not going to put you on the spot. We're not going to try to sell you anything. We just want to sit back and listen to you, have a little chat about what it costs to be you in retirement, and then design a plan to help you get on your way. No cost, no obligation, certainly no judgment. We'll meet you where you are. 417-889-7233. You can also find out more about us online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Well, Randy and Jake, we're out of time for this week. Thank you so much for your time. Again, belated happy birthday, Randy. For Randy and Jake, I'm Jeff Shade. Have yourself a great weekend. We'll talk again next week right here with another edition of Show Me the Money on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
The information provided in the preceding program is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its completeness or accuracy. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Financial planning is offered through Floyd Financial Group, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.